Listen, one time for Piers Morgan, he's had some great panels. This is a good one. I wanted to let this play and give a little reaction.
Well, to debate all this, I'm joined by the chairman of O'Leary Ventures and Shark Tank star Kevin O'Leary, Brandon Tatum, host of The Office of Tatum, Marianne Williamson, who challenged Biden and Harris for the Democrat nomination, and the host of the David Pakman Show, David Pakman. Well, welcome to all of you. Kevin O'Leary, I'm just getting a feeling like I had in 2016, that this is Trump's to lose now. What's your feeling telling you?
Well, and I get this data pretty well every morning. There's 43 counties in 7 states. 45% of the population hates Trump, and 45% of the population loves Trump. And so we're down to this 10% that's floating. And that's why you're seeing these candidates go to these counties. At least they were very intensely last week, and I expect they will this week as well. My guess is this is going to be an extraordinary election outcome because it may be decided by less than 10,000 votes.
Yeah, Marianne Williamson, it is incredibly tight. And there are obviously bigger picture questions about why American elections now come down to literally a few thousand votes in a few counties and a few swing states. It does seem absurd for a nation as big and powerful as America that this keeps happening. But we are where we are with this one.
And there should be a sign to the Harris administration to do something different in these next 2 weeks. What they need to do different in the next 2 weeks is to stop talking so much about Donald Trump. They seem more obsessed with Donald Trump than they seem obsessed with gaining power in order to improve the lives of the average American.
Focusing on Donald Trump is most of what the Harris campaign does when they have to answer serious questions. I think that they have been talking to, or she has been talking to the average American, but I think the things that they're trying to drive home aren't the things that we really have issues on, right? So the average American, if you ask most people on the street, they're worried about their pocketbooks, the economy, and they're worried about immigration and some other things. But most of what she talks about aren't typically those things.
Well, Pierce, I'll tell you this. A wise man has said, you can never trust a person that promises you something that they're going to do tomorrow that they could have done yesterday. These people have been in office and they've been feckless. Donald Trump has already been in office as well. If he was going to be a fascist, if he was going to take over the country, he's going to be a dictator, he's going to be Hitler, then he'd already been Hitler. So you could believe them for what their track record has shown. And I think Donald Trump actually has a plan for the people. And I think it's genuine. That's why he's connecting. He's not connecting because he's so brilliant. He's an older man. He's slowing down. He's connected because he genuinely believes it. Not Hillary Clinton, but Kamala Harris is not connected because they don't really care. I do not believe they care about the middle class people. I don't think they really care about the individuals who are struggling or suffering and things that they could actually address.
When you really take a look at it and say, oh, she doesn't care about the middle class. But honestly, no, the policies that she's put forth are not going to address any of the things that everyday people are dealing with whatsoever. No way, no way. He's going to talk about it, but even the $20,000 that she was initially, proposing, up to $20,000 loan for black men, decriminalizing marijuana. These things that were supposed to be aimed at black men, eventually it backfired because Barack. That was the same week Barack tried to talk to black men in Pennsylvania, and that backfired.
But Kamala Harris is not connected because they don't really care. I do not believe they care about the middle class people. I don't think they really care about the individuals who are struggling or suffering and things that they could actually address. They do not have a plan for you. And I wish that America would wake up. The only reason that they're polling close to Donald Trump is because of propaganda. Major news outlets are just pumping lies. I see them every day. Lies about abortion, lies about Trump sending the military against the American people. I mean, it's just straight lies that they're pushing. That's the only reason they're close.
Now, he is so right when you think about it. When you look at the liberal media and you look at the conservative media, both sides have their agenda and both sides have their opinion, right? So the news is reported in a certain way based on their agenda. Now, I'll deal with the Republican conservative side first. When they report on Kamala Harris, typically they're just reporting what actually has been happening with her. They really haven't been slandering her or telling outright lies. All the material that they play for Kamala Harris that is hard for me to see, hard for a lot of us to see, that can't be unseen, they're just playing the material. It's not like they're doctoring it or making her seem like she's not answering questions, making her seem like any way than what she already is. So essentially, what I'm trying to say is that the campaign has been so bad on the Democratic side that I don't think the Republicans really have to lie. They just play what she's already doing and then comment on it. You know what I'm saying? Now on the liberal side, the Democratic side, MSNBCs and all that, they are really, they're doing what they have to do. They have to try to pretend that she's not tripping and falling on her face in a lot of these interviews. They have to make it seem like what you saw with your own eyes didn't actually happen. And that's the biggest problem, is that we can see. We can see. And I'm talking about, when I say we, I mean the voters who were in the middle, the voters who weren't hard left or hard right. They can see. We're not blind.
I have the same divide in my own family. I mean, I got a family cut in half. I have to listen to this stuff every night at dinner as one side blasts the other. But that is the American kitchen table today. And I would say one thing about this that people should start considering, because the outcome, as we've been discussing, is unknown, but we're just literally days away. I think the takeaway from this election that is going to be looked at for a long time if the Democrats lose, and the history that will be made, is circumventing the democratic system by actually not allowing the democracy to choose the next leader after Biden was stepped aside or was pushed aside, whatever you want to call it. Would be a huge mistake if she loses, because she was not a successful candidate in 2019. She was not a successful candidate in 2020. And if she's not a successful candidate now, it'll be because the same reason that 88% of investment advisors can't beat the S&P 500, Obama can't beat the index that is made by his own democracy, his own Democratic convention. He picked her. Maybe Hillary Clinton picked her. Maybe some movie stars picked her. We simply don't know. She was anointed, and if she fails, it's their fault.
Yeah.
And they're going to own it. And it happened to Hillary Clinton, too. I remember I was there in Pittsburgh when she was anointed, and Bruce Springsteen sat on the stage and sang about, boy, it's going to be great while she's president, and she got smoked.
On the Democratic side, because when everything first started, I wasn't necessarily looking at Donald Trump. But how the Democrats have handled this whole thing with this particular election has just been, to me, sloppy and really disingenuous, and just assuming that, everybody who's voted Democrat before in the past is going to fall in line. I totally agree. I think that they really should have done a primary and let people duke it out. And even if she was going to be anointed as or chosen as the front runner, at least she would have had some practice or something like that before she just jumped out there. She went from virtually unknown in the background for the most part, and all of a sudden jumped out here and is now supposed to be acting like, oh, I'm going to run the free world. You know what I'm saying? And I agree. I think the Democrats made a huge mistake, and I think that it really showed how much they out of touch. So when we look back on this election, I don't think she's going to win, like I said, but when we look back on this election, I think we're really going to take a look and say, you know what? That's exactly the point. They should have done it differently, done it more respectfully, and chose the strongest possible candidate.
She was also an anointment, so I think that's got to stop. They got to stop trying to pick stocks and let the actual party decide.
I do think this is right. I think the problem for Kamala Harris is she got parachuted in to this gig, coronated, in a weird way, where I thought it would have helped the Democrats a lot more if they'd had a proper brokered convention where other people threw their hat in the ring and they juked it out. It would have toughened her up, perhaps, for the battle against Trump. What do you think about that? You think they should have allowed others to maybe get involved in a race against her to replace Biden?
Yeah, Pierce, 100%. First of all, she shouldn't have been an affirmative action hire the first time. They should have gotten a qualified black woman that was very successful, very intelligent, that can add value to the presidency when Joe Biden chose his running mate. They didn't. They just picked a black woman. And I think they picked the wrong one. And then you go down the list and say, okay, now that Joe Biden dropped out in the 11th hour, they just put her in there. She's incredibly unpopular. She's incredibly unintelligent. This woman is a terrible candidate. She laughs and she cannot articulate a clear sentence about her policy positions. And then she gets on the campaign trail and runs on, I'm a woman. I'm going to do this for Black people. Ma'am, you have never done anything for Black people. And you're not a clear representation of a good quality woman. And we can go over her history, but I'll save that for another time. But these people are patronizing young Black men. Obama comes out and says, well, y'all are against women. That's why you don't want to. No, we're not stupid anymore. We're sick of these people promising things that they're never going to deliver on. And Kamala Harris, at the 11th hour, is now rolling out Lizzo. Big Lizzo got on a private jet cussing and swearing, and her lyrics are degenerate. You got Eminem is degenerate. You have all of these celebrities. Those are not the average everyday person. These celebrities are not worrying about what they're going to eat in healthcare. They're extremely wealthy, and they're not connecting with the people. And that's why Donald Trump is kicking her butt. And if it wasn't for lies and deception and coercion by the media and all of that, Donald Trump will be winning by 20 points right now.
The celebrityism, I don't really think that it's helping Harris. I think that she is trying to pull out all the stops, being that we don't have a lot of time until election day. And I think that the celebrities, man, they really should have just been coming out a lot earlier. But I don't think that I don't think they were pressed to pull out the celebrities right away. But I think that as they're seeing now that she's not doing as good as what they thought or hoped. Now it's like we had Eminem in Detroit, I think yesterday or the day before, with Barack bringing him out, and Barack's doing some Eminem lines. And, from what I hear, well, he just mentioned Lizzo, and then from what I hear, they're supposed to be having Beyonce, the celebrity of all celebrities, do some type of concert or talk in the upcoming days. But I don't think it matters at this point. If you're going to bring out the heavy hitter Beyonce, you bring that out kind of early. I don't really think that Beyonce is going to change anybody who's on the fence. I think this is a different kind of election. Celebrity power does matter, no question. I'm not going to say it doesn't, but celebrity power, I don't think is enough. It's a whole different type of voter this time. They even talked about, like in Georgia, for instance, and some other places, early voting. Secretary of State, particularly in Georgia, said they never saw numbers like this before as far as people voting that early. People are very passionate about this particular election, and I think that they're going to vote. I talked to a buddy of mine last week. He's voting for Harris, and he was saying that a lot of the Black men in particular who say they're not voting for Harris are going to end up sitting this one out and not voting for Trump. And I said, man, I disagree. I think there's a lot of Black people who are going to vote for Donald Trump because they prefer his policy over the lack of policy on the Democratic side. So
the thing is, I want to play a clip from MSNBC. Obviously, you hate Trump with a pathological violence. But they went out and spoke to people in the street, and this happened.
Trump talks about this a lot. He says, Kamala Harris became Black when it was convenient. Right. Yeah. Can you talk to me about, do you agree with him on that? Do you feel like she's wearing her Blackness?
Absolutely. When she sworn into the Senate, it was as the first Indian American. Thank you. It's fine. We don't care.
We all know she's not Black. Let's understand that. We are all clear of that. But my point of view, and like I told you earlier, she's already been there. She's in office right now.
I mean, David, that's pretty devastating when you hear that for Kamala Harris, isn't it? They all think she's a bit of a phony who's basically using them as a community.
Those two people did say that, but if you look at any public opinion survey, this is not ranking anywhere. And there still seems to be confusion about the concept of being biracial. But no, I don't think that's really devastating at all. And in fact, I think that, I don't know what interviews Brandon's been watching, but she just did an interview yesterday with NBC where she was almost goaded by the interviewer. Why aren't you talking about being a woman and being Black? And she said, people can tell what my identity is. I'm running on policy, and then people can judge the identity however they want. She's stepped away from identity politics, which I think is fantastic, by the way.
David, let me ask you,
whether you want to believe it or not, Candace Owens has been Candace Owens has gone through this woman's whole lineage of her family, going all the way back to the 1800s, birth certificates, death certificates, and have really uncovered that, Kamala in all likelihood is not a black person. It's not doesn't have African. The melanin in her skin is probably from being Indian. But again, I don't care one way or another. I really don't. But I do know in the beginning, everybody was talking about she'll be the first black woman president. She'll be the first black woman president. The first black woman president. A lot of people I know, particularly my sisters, meaning black women. Oh, she's gonna be the first black woman president. Da 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 da. And Kamala never came out and said anything like that. She's even said most recently, she said maybe about a couple of weeks ago about how her mother raised her and her sister to be two strong black women. Her 100% Indian mom raised her to be this strong black woman. This is what she said. So she's always put it out there, at least early on in the campaign, that you know she's a black woman, or reiterated it if that's what you want to say. I don't care one way or another, but I think that she's backed off politics because I think that she believes that many voters believe that she in fact is not black. And I think that I have to say, Candace Owens is somebody who's got people looking. Not the hardcore, I'm going to vote for Kamala from day one voters. I mean, the people who are kind of like, Janet Jackson said it, this person said it, that person said it, Candace Owens has done all this research. You better believe it's millions of people who saw multiple episodes that Candace Owens have done, going back and pulling a lot of her lineage and getting pictures and talking to family members and all that. So my point is that there's some doubt out there. There's no doubt about it. There's doubt out there about her being quote unquote black. The theory is that she's Indian, obviously, and Indian and Irish. But I think if it comes to play or comes to the forefront that she in fact is not black, there'll be many people infuriated with her, and they'll really look at her like, okay, she's been lying about her identity, even if she didn't know about her identity, whatever the case is. But my point is, she's backing off that stuff now because it's not helping her. So she's kind of like, I'll let people call me whatever they want to call me. You can call me Indian, you can call me black, you can call me Jamaican, you can call me Irish, whatever you want to call me. I'm running as the president, and it doesn't matter because I'll be whatever y'all call me. That's how she's playing it right now.
Politics as a cudgel.
David, let me ask you this. One of the things she stands for, along with Joe Biden, is she has done nothing while they've been in office to stem this, in my view, horrendously unfair situation of trans athletes competing in women's sport. And an astonishing survey has just come out today by the United Nations that reveals that female athletes have lost 900 medals to transgender rivals competing against them in women's sporting categories. This is a UN report. That's 600 female athletes in more than 400 competitions have lost nearly 900 medals in 29 different sports. When the average American sees that both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris...
Sending gift cards in bulk can be a nightmare. But what if it could be tremendous? Tremendous is a platform that...
Harris now support this unfairness. And that's what it is. It's just unfair. It's nothing to do with being transphobic or anything else. It's just unfair. And when it's supported by a report like that from the UN, that's one of her problems too, is that people think they're supporting the indefensible. They lack basic common sense. What do you say to that?
I'm struggling to think that you're taking this any more seriously than as something that might generate clicks on YouTube, Piers.
Wow, you don't think that's serious?
Hold on, Piers, I can't even get a sentence out.
What, you don't think it's serious?
Hold on a second. The vast majority of those instances in the UN report are outside the United States and have nothing to do with the president or vice president of the United States at its face. And secondly, I would challenge you to tell me the quotes that Biden or Harris have put forward wherein they have weighed in on how sports leagues should be handling these decisions. But 92% of that study is not even in the U.S. So I don't even know why you're bringing this up.
What's that got to do with the principle?
Are biological men who are transitioning into women, who are going to fight in women's sports or play against biological women in women's sports, is at the top of every American's mind? No, but it is an issue if you talk to a lot of people. It is something that they don't tend to agree with. whether you're voting for Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, most Americans don't agree with that. At least from what I see, they don't agree that a biological man who's transitioning should be in the ring in MMA or boxing or any other sport competing against a biological woman. I have a daughter. I wouldn't want my daughter playing against someone who was biologically a man. It's just something that I feel like the Democrats, he said, have you play a quote where Biden or Harris has said anything about it? No. The point is that they haven't said anything about it at all. And that when you look at Donald Trump and Donald Trump's whole coalition, Vance, all those other people, they say they're against it. That's the thing about the Republicans. They'll tell you what they're not for. And that's what's resonating with people. Like for me, I'm not for that. I think it's wrong. And I think it's just not the right thing to do. It's not being transphobic or homophobic. It's just a wrong thing to do. And the Republicans will say how they feel about that. Like, no, we're not gonna do that. Trump has already said that. So while Biden and Harris, we don't know how they feel because they won't talk about it. That's what the Democrats do a lot of times. They may have a position, but they're not going to tell you why, because they don't want to offend anyone outside of, straight men or straight women. They don't want to offend anybody outside of that, and that's the whole problem. Is that at least Trump and his coalition have the guts to say how they feel.
Well, the principle is you're saying Kamala Harris and Biden have come out in support of this.
They do. They support policies which actively
protect.
They support policies that protect transgender athletes performing in women's sport, and I think that is madness. You're saying, well, because most of these things in this UN report were outside of America, it doesn't matter. It does matter.
What I'm saying, it's a completely contrived issue that almost no one cares about in every single opinion poll.
Wow. You see, I think that's incredibly deluded.
Yeah.
People do care about it. They care about the integrity of
women's sport. It just doesn't show up in any opinion poll as a primary issue.
Dude, it matters. And I bet if he had a daughter, I bet if this guy who's talking had a daughter and his daughter went to go do some type of wrestling or fighting or anything that she had to compete against a biological male, especially something where she had to fight, like in some of the Olympic boxing and stuff like that. If he had a daughter who was competing in one of those sports and a biological man kicked her ass, I bet you he'd feel different.
Interest, do you
they
think,
care about it,
but
it doesn't show up in a single poll?
What's your view? Do you think it's fair?
I think that it depends on the sport, and I think we need to talk about this for probably 90 minutes to really have a productive conversation.
Really? So when you saw the Paris Olympics and you saw 2 gold medal winners in women's boxing who actually were born with biological male chromosomes, you think that's right?
That is not the truth as far as I understand it.
Really?
I don't know who you're talking about. If you can name them, then maybe we can get into more detail.
Well, you know what I'm talking about. It was well publicized.
Well, tell me. Tell me who you're talking about.
I can't remember their exact names. There were 2 gold medal winners. Well, I can find them now if it helps you. I don't know why the names matter.
The one who was the source of a lot of viral articles was born a woman, always lived as a woman, always competed as a woman. I'm sorry?
What was her name?
Imani something.
All right, so you don't know either. So don't be quite so patronizing if you don't know either. But the truth is...
Well, you're bringing it up, Piers. See, here's the thing. Hold on a second, Piers. Hold on a second. You do this all the time, Piers. You bring something up, and then you evaluate your guest's opinion as to how much it matters. You brought it up. If it doesn't actually matter, don't bring it up.
No, just to be clear, you were haranguing me for not remembering the name. I said the name's irrelevant. What's relevant is whether the gold medal winners have biological male chromosomes when they're getting into a boxing ring
they do not.
and punching women in the face so hard that one of the women competitors, a female, quit after 45 seconds.
Yes.
I remember that. And she was like she had never been hit so hard in her life. So this guy's acting like it didn't happen. You don't need to know the name. I don't know the name either, but I totally remember when that happened. She got hit so hard, she was like, I'm out of here. Because she was getting hit by a man, basically. Well, not basically, but she was getting hit by a man.
Because
in that instance,
that
there is nothing to the story that the boxer that prevailed was ever a man.
Wow.
Just nothing.
And yet you know
nothing.
that
there's no evidence of
it.
It was a viral right-wing story based on nothing.
Hang on. You know that boxer was banned from the world championships precisely because there is evidence. You know that, right?
Yes. Do you know the details of that, Piers? Do you know? Tell the full story. Go ahead. Tell the full story.
That boxer was banned, along with the other one, from the World Championships because it has been reported that they tested positive for male chromosomes, right? If you know better, tell me.
That's not the full. I do know better, and I will tell you. That was done by a Russian lab who had an interest in disqualifying her because it jeopardized the undefeated record of a Russian boxer. It's just, that's all they have, and it's totally debunked. Piers, I thought you were better than this.
It's not debunked, and you'll regret saying that because it's true. Let me go to Kevin. Kevin, I have a common sense test with this stuff. One of the things Trump is very good at, his instincts are very commonsensical. You can hate some of the rhetoric, and I do when he goes off sometimes at people. But what you can't deny is instincts for what average Americans are thinking. Normally pretty spot on. And he said recently, I think last week, he would ban all trans athletes from women's sport. Do you think it matters or not?
You know, I actually enjoyed that narrative you two just had, and I have a solution that I think you'll both agree with, and I think we could settle this issue forever. Globally,
I know what it's going to be.
We know almost 40 years ago that we started testing for doping, for example, and we exclude cyclists in Olympics that are doping, and we found other drugs that we exclude, tested by Olympic testers. So why don't we just settle this and create the transgender Olympics? So if you started in one gender and you switch to another, you join this third category and you go at it.
As a perfect solution. Absolutely, because what it does, it says, okay, cool. If you're going to be a transgender, you will compete against other transgender people. So if you are a man who is transitioning into a woman, you'll fight another man who's transitioning into a woman. That is common sense. Instead of pretending that someone who was born a man transitions into a woman, and now that person is a woman. They're not a biological woman. They never will be. Right? I'm not mad at it. I'm not homophobic or whatever you want to call it. It just is what it is. That person is never going to be a biological woman. Same thing with a woman transitioning into a man. You'll never be a biological man. It is what it is. But that is great advice.
I think everybody would agree with that. And I think it'd make it very easy. And it's tested by DNA. And that would be it, because I also agree it's kind of unfair if you take a man and change him into a woman using today's technology and he pounds the crap out of somebody in a boxing ring, or she does. That's not fair. It just doesn't make common sense. And that goes through to this thing you're talking about with Trump. He's authentic. You know, I had this narrative with my daughter yesterday in New York, and we really were heated. And I said, do you agree that he has no filter? He just puts out what's on his mind, and you know with certainty that's what's on his mind. And she said, that I agree with. He has no filter, and he's authentic. Now, if you don't like that, don't vote for him.
Yeah.
The people are going to decide. But I don't feel the same way about the other candidate. I respect VP Harris, but it seems to me she's trying to process every single sentence. And I'm a little worried about something. For me to get the actual data on her pricing policy, of which I have many investments in food services, I had to call Mark Cuban and ask him, you're obviously stumping for her. You're a shill for her. What the hell is she talking about?
He don't know what she's talking about. He don't care. Again, like I said, Mark Cuban has some type of beef with Donald Trump, because Mark Cuban, based on what I've seen and I've known about him, I can't understand why he's on the Harris side. It doesn't actually make sense.
Should I be worried? And he said, no, you don't have to worry about this. It's a crazy policy. It'll never happen. Okay, well, that's not good. Why can't she say that herself? Or 28% taxes, or unrealized gains on capital? I got to call Cuban for the answer. Luckily, I know the guy. Maybe he should be the president.
Yeah, you know what? At least he probably had the answers. I mean, Bo, let me flip it around on you here. For your generation, what are the things that Donald Trump does or says which you don't agree with? I mean, when you're having an honest, frank discussion with him, do you tell him what he should steer clear of?
Yeah, 100%. I think a lot of the vaccine stuff, I wasn't too fond of. Some of his more pro-choice stances I wasn't too fond of, because I'm very pro-life. I do think it's funny how the media paints him as someone who's too pro-life and on all these things when I don't agree with a lot of his. He's pro-choice in many ways. So I think there's some things that my generation and myself definitely agree with. But I think most of all, you're 100% right when you said he hits on those things that we really care about. I don't know what David thinks he's saying when he says that no one cares about transgender athletes in sports. That could not be further from the truth. I was just talking to a UFC fighter last night, Colby Covington, and he said it's awful. It's brutal. We have men transitioning to women, and they're joining like UFC thing, not Dana White's UFC, but they're joining MMA in other leagues, and they're beating the crap out of biological women, and it's brutal. And I guess at a certain point, it's just what our country's going to allow to happen, and he's acting like it's had nothing to do with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, and like they don't support it. But it was Kamala Harris's VP pick, Tim Walz, who was putting tampons in men's bathrooms, in boys' schools. So I think we know what they support and what side they're on. And I think that Trump has 100% done a perfect, more than phenomenal job showing us his policy, showing us what he cares about and what he's passionate about, and showing us that he's not going to let this stuff happen.
I think that it's America. It's a great time to really take a step back and look at each candidate. But I do think that what I saw so far can't be unseen. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Crucial Convo.